It's turbulent times in the luxury industry. There's yet another brand who seems to be in trouble. First it was Dior with the alleged real cost of production of their bags. Then it was Louis Vuitton at the beginning of this year with this slightly chaotic launch of the re-edition of the collaboration with artist Takashi Murakami. And now it's Van Cleef Arpels. Over the past weeks, a series of videos went online by an influencer who shared her experience with the product, its quality, its disappointing quality, and also how disappointed she was with the service and also the after-sales service. And let's say it did not create a positive climate around Van Cleef Arpels. And when I discovered those videos, I found it interesting and I thought it's an interesting case for us to discuss because it reflects on the current state of luxury. And also if you're interested in running a business, no matter if it's a jewelry business, a luxury business, or a business overall, it's very, very interesting to actually analyze this case when it comes to PR and communications. Just before I dive in, I need to say a few things here. First of all, this is a non-sponsored video. I'm just sharing my personal opinion and my research here. And everything in this video is alleged and for entertainment purposes only. Now what happened? Over the past few weeks, influencer Monica Hamada shared her experience on her Instagram via Reels and also on TikTok with the brand Van Cleef Arpels. I also linked her account in the description below. If you want to watch all these videos, I'm just going to give you a brief summary of it. So the pièce de résistance is the Alhambra bracelet. It's quite a famous bracelet by Van Cleef Arpels, and the company itself is owned by Richemont, which is another luxury conglomerate competing with LVMH, Kering, all these big players that we know from the news. And this bracelet, I'm sure you have seen it, it's the one with these kind of flowers. Very often it is confused with a detail of the monogram canvas by Louis Vuitton, but this is the signature Alhambra line by Van Cleef Arpels. Van Cleef Arpels is not a new company, it has been around for decades. We have to say it was founded in the 19th century by a diamond cutter from Holland who moved to Paris and then founded the business with his father-in-law. So his name was Van Cleef, his father-in-law's surname was Arpels. This is how the company was founded. And I saw over the past years this Alhambra collection gaining more and more, let's say, popularity offline and online. And it reflects a similar development what we saw, for example, at Cartier, which is also owned by Richemont, but then also by Tiffany's, that they came up with these iconic designs and then they were heavily advertised and became really, really popular. I have to say, for me, it has become a bit too popular. I've been seeing it everywhere and this is kind of, for me, not making it super attractive, but I understand that a lot of people really like it. Also, what we have to say is this is not a cheap item. We are talking here about a bracelet that costs over 5,000 euros, depending on the material that is used, because there are different styles of this bracelet. So we are talking here about an expensive item where people have certain expectations, not only to the product, but the service and also the after-sales service, because I can just tell from my own experience, if I buy something expensive, I don't expect to be mistreated in the boutique if I come back and have an issue. Whatever that issue is, at least I hope that I can have a conversation, that people listen to me, that they respect me. And I think it will become a bit clearer once we go through these videos that this was probably the biggest issue Monica Hamada had with that whole situation. Also, another thing that I would like to mention here, because the timeline is also important in my opinion, when you go on the website, you see that Van Cleef Arpels for the Alhambra collection, or I think in general, offers 30 days free return. So this is also a detail that we have to keep in mind because I'm going to come back to that in a bit. So what happened was that Monica Hamada bought that bracelet and after some time, after 2 months, she noticed some tarnishing on that bracelet, which she found weird because it's an 18 karat gold bracelet. And she didn't expect it to tarnish. So what did she do? She went to the boutique and they then said, we can polish it, we can clean it, and with this it should be fine. So the item comes back And then she looks at it and she sees that the tarnishing is still there, and you can see it when you look into the design. You have these very intricate lines like branches or bars on the design, and you could see the tarnishing. That's what she said. So she then talks to the sales manager. She even posted a video about the conversation. The sales manager then seemed to be kind of understanding, but he called the manager, or at first Hamada thought it's another sales assistant, but it turned out later that this person was the manager. And then when you watch the video, you can see why the customer got upset, because that person, the manager, tried to convince not only the customer but also the sales assistant that they did not really see anything, or what you see is just a shadow of something. And even I have to say, if I had been in that situation, I would also feel weird. Why do they say I make something up even though you can see it? So it was a very weird situation, and what did Van Cleef Arpels then offer was either send it for another round of cleaning. I don't understand what this would help, because it just came back from cleaning, or that Hamada could have that motif replaced and she should pay herself for it. So my first thought was, they offer 30 days return, and then she comes back after 2 months, which is 60 days, not that much after that period that they give, and she has an issue with it. Yeah, even if you are not legally required to refund it, for example, in the EU it's 14 days, sometimes you need to decide what is better now, to have an argument or to just refund it or help the client make the situation better. And I do have to say, for Van Cleef Arpels, this is a problem, yes. But if you're a small brand, it's even worse, because very often it means that this quite negatively affects your business, even more than if you're a big brand. But this is an overall issue. And this case is so interesting because it actually reflects a standard case that you learn in business school. In business school, they teach you, in case of a crisis, whatever a crisis is, it can be a hurricane and you're the politician, or it can be a faulty product, like in the case of Van Cleef Arpels. You should communicate. Communication is key. Why? On the one hand, if you don't communicate properly, you just make yourself as a brand vulnerable, because there can be interpretations, allegations, and you just don't really deal well with it. Or if you deny it, you make it even worse. But on the other hand, if you communicate with your customer or the person in question, you show that you actually make an effort to solve the problem. Even if you think that you are right and you think this is completely made up and this is a customer who just wants to make money out of us or whatever, it's always better to communicate than to stay silent or deny it. So this is what is taught at business school. I have to say, from the brand perspective, I was a bit surprised how they reacted, and I will also go into more detail a bit later. But I was also surprised that a representative of such a brand would communicate in that way, that this is something that is allowed at this brand or that it is accepted at the brand. I would have thought, okay, at a big brand like Van Cleef Arpels that has a big PR and communications department, as I assume, something like this would not happen. Was I surprised about the reaction of the sales assistant? I have to say I'm actually not, because I had multiple experiences in many other luxury brand outlets where I was treated similarly. So I was actually not really surprised that that happened, and I'm also going to share this particular experience a bit later. So when we look at this case, we need to talk about 3 categories. And what I would also like to say is, this is not a video where I'm going to bash a certain brand or where it's this doomsday scenario, luxury is dead, all of this. No. I want to take these 3 categories and go through it also from this business perspective, what was done by the 2 sides, the customer and also the brand, in terms of communications. So these 3 categories are: first, it's the faulty product. Second, it's the communication by said representative of the brand. And third, it's the communication and reaction, or the lack thereof, by the brand itself online, mainly online on social media. So let's start with point number 1, this allegedly faulty product. It's an 18-karat gold bracelet, and the question everybody had online, I also checked the comments underneath all these videos that she posted, was, is this really 18-karat gold? gold is not supposed to tarnish, or even she herself said she has other gold jewelry from other brands where she didn't have that issue. And she even herself said in one of the videos that she brought that bracelet to a specialist. She had it checked because she wanted to know whether it was really 18 karat gold. So there's one thing that I have to say here, and it's a bit disappointing. I talked to some jewelry experts, and yes, even 18 karat gold can tarnish. It doesn't have to, but it can. And why? Because gold is always a mix of gold and other metal alloys. And then it depends on the percentage of these metal alloys that are mixed in. So it can happen that you have an 18 karat gold bracelet or necklace and you wear it all the time. You expose it to sweat, you expose it to humidity, you shower with it, and suddenly it starts tarnishing, even after 2 months. So theoretically, this is not totally out of the question. We can even say, okay, this is a risk that you also take when you buy an 18 karat gold bracelet. In brackets, even if we don't expect it to happen, it's not completely excluded. So the thing is, we know this tarnishing from silver. When we wear it a lot, we see that we need to clean it. Also, when you wear a lot of pink gold or rose gold, it can also happen because in rose gold you have a high amount of copper in there, and then this also tarnishes. So it's kind of also our awareness about the products. I also, up until this case, I thought tarnishing for 18 karat gold is almost to be excluded. Also 18 karat yellow gold can tarnish, but having said that, the likelihood of this happening to yellow gold is lower than for silver and rose gold. And now we also have to look at the particular design, because when you look at this flower-like design of that bracelet, we see these branches or bars that I mentioned before, very fine lines basically, and very often such a design is achieved by lasering it on. I'm not a jewelry expert. This was an assumption shared by the experts to me that this might have been lasered on. And when you laser things on, very often you get so-called burn marks. You also have this problem with box chain links, for example. When you put it under the microscope, you can see these burn marks. So what do you do then? You can either polish it, but very often it's very difficult to polish this away or clean it away. So very often it's plated with rhodium to basically cover up those burn marks. But then we know if it's plated, it can also wear off. So then if it's exposed to, again, sweat, lotions, humidity, whatever, it may wear off and then you see those burn marks. So okay, this can happen. But this is only the dimension about the faulty product, which we now know it can happen even to a brand like Van Cleef Arpels. But this brings me to the second point, the communication with the customer, also the after-sales service, because we know when we walk into a store and we want to buy something, everything is happy and they very often want to help us. Sometimes they don't, but this depends on the brand. But it's usually a different climate than when we walk into the store with an issue. Nevertheless, I just mentioned the price point before. I also mentioned Van Cleef itself as a brand. So you would actually expect that if somebody has a problem, even if it's not within the 30 days, that at least the environment is a friendly one, an accommodating one. And even if they can't solve your problem, at least don't make you feel like you have to defend yourself. What I find so interesting about this case is they send it for polishing, which I can understand. If I have a problem with a certain product that I bought and they offer me polishing or cleaning, it is a bit annoying because you can't wear it, but probably you also understand that you can't just walk in immediately and get a refund or a new product. I would actually consider this, okay, they are trying, let's give them a chance. But then saying that you bring it back to have it polished again, even though it just came back from cleaning and it still had these issues, I don't really understand this. One of the experts also said the reason may have been that they try to clean it because at the moment we know gold is at record prices. So they try to clean the bracelet before doing anything to it where they would need additional gold or something like this. But still, you spend a lot of money on a bracelet, you're already not happy with the cleaning, so what would the next step be? And then I also have to say, if I buy something and 2 months later it's kind of broken or I have issues with it. And then the brand tells me the only other option is either this free cleaning or I have to pay to basically fix their fault. I don't know how I would react. So if this had been presented to me as an option, forget about all the communication. I would already be a bit annoyed. Let's put it like this. And then you can also see from the videos that Monica Hamada shared, I don't think the real issue was the product. I think, yes, she was annoyed that a product like this had that issue, but I don't think she would have posted all these videos online if the brand had said, okay, let's find a solution together. And from how I can tell it from the videos, it's actually at first she had the feeling that somebody may have listened to her, this sales assistant, but then this other manager comes in and she looks at the whole bracelet and then says, basically either they are making it up or it is your fault. And I think this is something as customers that we don't like. If somebody who sells us something then says, you are the problem, we did nothing wrong. And what this lady was referring to when she said, oh, in this light it looks like this, was actually or may have been the point that I made before. These bars, when there are burn marks or when there's tarnishing, because you have more, let's say, area or surface for reflection, it actually enforces the effect. But that doesn't mean that it is fixed. And I think that was the whole issue, that this manager did not want to say, okay, there is actually a problem with the product. And I get it. There are always two sides of a conflict, or also when there's an issue with the product. The customer may think there's an issue. The seller may think they did everything right. And then it's basically one statement against another statement. So who is right here? But at the same time, I need to say, just standing there and making somebody feel silly, let's put it like this, is probably not the best strategy, even if you think you're right. And I'm telling you this from the perspective of a business owner. They may perceive it, and this is also the difficulty of being in retail. And then it's even more difficult if you're in luxury. But as I said before, for a luxury product, it's not only the product itself, it's the service, it's the after-sales service, it's how people feel when they enter your store. And if you already feel like, oh, I'm not going to have a chance, like I spent so much money, but they're not going to help me, what is the sense then in buying that product instead of taking your dollars and spending it maybe with a small independent jeweler who really helps you? And I will come back to that point in a bit. And judging from the videos, you could see that Monica Hamada was then also very annoyed about how she was talked to. There's a separate video about a phone call that happened afterwards where that manager called and insisted that she was more than a sales assistant. You can see then the human perspective comes in. Then it's not about facts anymore. It's about emotions. And for a brand, it's the worst thing to have these negative emotions about your brand, a reputation that you have built up for such a long time. In the case of Van Cleef Arpels, you have built that up over decades. But as I said before, I was surprised about the brand overall, Van Cleef Arpels, but was I surprised about the attitude by the sales assistant? Unfortunately, I was not, because it happened also to me before. I have several examples from many brands. One is a British brand where I bought a belt, and then I needed an additional hole in that belt because it was not available in my size. They said they can't do it and just said, like, find a cobbler around the corner, which I did, and he fixed it for me. But then I asked myself, why do I pay for this belt? I don't know. The second example is a trunk and bag manufacturer. You can see I'm not going to say the names, I'm going to be fair here, but they refused to renew the stitching on one of the travel garment bags and basically said it's not fixable, even though it can be fixed. And again, a cobbler around the corner could then fix it for us. And the third example is from a very famous leather goods brand, which is famous for their waiting lists. And it was also about a bracelet, a leather bracelet. And I got this as a gift. I was very happy about this. And the problem again was I needed an additional hole in that bracelet. So I brought it back to the boutique thinking that they can do this for me, thinking they are a luxury leather manufacturer. So making a hole in such a product can't be that difficult. So they said, yes, we are sending it to Paris. We can do it for you, not here. Then I said, fine. I think it also took a very long time. I think it was 2 months, but I was fine with it. I wanted to have it done by them because I thought then the quality would be fine. So it comes back, I pick it up, and then you have all of these nicely done holes, and then one really ugly one, which was actually out of that whole line. So I see this, and then I said, sorry, but this is not at all what it should look like. It was also part of the design that you have these bigger holes. And then the sales assistant, I expected her to at least also say, yeah, it looks actually not great. This is not our standard. I'm very sorry. No, she actually said, and I'm translating here from German, she said, are you kidding me? This is hand done. So I was there in the shop, and then I thought, okay, what is going on here? I'm just pointing out a mistake. So then I said, look, I don't care if this is hand done. It does not look great. What can we do about this? I have to be very transparent with you. This was already some time ago, but I think she then moved away and talked to a different client to give me time to think about it or something like this. And I remember her talking to another client who is probably a regular at that brand, judging from her clothes and also the bag that she was carrying. We are not talking here about a standard bag that lady was carrying, and she also had a problem and said, look into my bag. It's completely ripped on the inside. Can we do something about it? And that very same sales assistant then said, no, we can't do anything. You have to buy a new one. Okay, so I knew probably I'm not the issue. Maybe she's the issue. And you may now say, maybe you were unlucky. Maybe she had a bad day, or she's the only one. There had been an issue at that particular store for some time, how they treated the customers. So I just said, look, I'm not happy with this. What can you offer me? Now I'm not asking you to repair it or whatever, but what is the solution? And then I was allowed to have the option, or this is how they made me feel, to get a new one without that additional hole. And then she basically just said, like, but you have to fix it yourself. And then I was like, okay, fine, I take it. And this is exactly what I did. I brought it to a jeweler, they fixed it for me, and it looked fine. It was no issue at all. But what happened here? The communication and after service was so bad. And I know that Bracelet was probably the cheaper range of that retailer. But still, if you sell certain items, we all expect a certain service. I did write a letter of complaint. I sent them an email. Actually, I think I sent it to the headquarters. To be fair, they answered quite quickly, and they also sent it papers, something to make up for it. So at least they somehow tried. But what happened? I now have a negative emotion towards that brand. Have I gone back since then? I didn't. And I'm also not sure if I will, or if I will go to that particular store. So this is something that brands have to be very careful about. So when you run your own business, this is also something that you always have to have in mind. A reputation and trust takes years to build up, but they can be destroyed like that. Within a second, and it's gone, and you lose that customer. And worst case, this customer tells other people. It doesn't always have to be, I go online and share a video. It can also be, I'm just telling my friend doesn't go there, they share it with their friends. Negative word of mouth is also not ideal, even if it's offline and not online. But let's come back to this whole Van Cleef & Arpels case, because I mentioned before there's a third dimension that we need to look at, and this is the communication, or lack thereof, by the brand. And you can already see there may have been a lack in communication by the brand overall, because after the videos went online, they went viral. I think the first video got 3.5 million views, a follow-up around 7 million views, and she even says in one of the videos, this is only Instagram. On TikTok, she reached even more people. So okay, it was one video, but can they really ignore that? So then I went onto the brand page on Instagram, and even days after the last video was posted by Monica Hamada, where she said she's returning the product, even days after that, people were commenting that they are disappointed with the brand. They are asking cynical questions like, will this also tarnish after 2 months? They also say, I always wanted a piece of your brand and I saved up for it, but now I'm not going to buy with you. So this is kind of a worst case that can happen to a brand. Of course, I'm sure in a few weeks nobody will talk about it. The internet is fast, and then we also forget very fast, but still, I'm not sure if it really helped the brand in the short and in the long run. And needless to say, this was one case, so I also don't expect them to directly address that influencer on their global brand page. This is also something that you learn in these communication courses at business school. So I kind of can understand this, but they did not even reply to those comments where you can say, oh, it's thousands of comments, it takes time. Still, they are a big brand. I assume they have a social media department who could sit for a few days and reply to those comments and say, we are very sorry, we are in touch with that particular customer, we try to fix it. So there would be a few things that you could do to at least comfort customers or potential customers. I'm a bit surprised that they did not really do that. Maybe they will do that in a few days, so I will keep checking the accounts. What happened to the case of Monica Hamada? I already mentioned it. She posted that she returned the item and then she received a book about the brand as an apology, and people were making fun of it. And this is this sad fact. Like, there are books about this company. It's a heritage company. It's a brand that has been in the making for decades. And I always kind of admired that brand. They also have these diamond courses, jewelry courses. They always try to establish themselves as a leader, not only in terms of the product, but also the craft, the technique, the heritage. And with one case, I'm not saying it's completely destroyed, but this reputation was scratched off a bit. And this is the sad thing. Probably they meant well and said, like, we want to show you that we are a company with a lot of heritage, that we care, but is a book then really the best thing to handle it? I don't know. And before I finish, I would like to discuss one thing with you, because this came up when I went through all these videos and looked into the reactions. So at the moment, there are a lot of complaints about luxury brands. So Van Cleef and Arpels was this one case that happened, but there are many, many other examples. And I actually think there's no day when I open Instagram and I don't see anyone complain about luxury products. It might be the algorithm and what I'm interested in, but still, I feel that there's kind of a negative environment at the moment towards these brands, also because of how they treat people in some cases, or the products. Also, there are discussions about the supply chain of these brands. So I see this, but at the same time, when I walk to the city center, and it doesn't matter if it's Vienna, London, New York, Bangkok, Hong Kong, people line up in front of the very exact brands that a lot of other people complain about. Or sometimes I know people complain about the brand and still they go back. So I want to know why. Why are people doing this? Because I think customers, first of all, we have a choice and we have power. Our dollars are power. We can decide where to spend them. And I made the decision in the past, if somebody treats me badly or I don't like the product, the simple answer is I don't shop with them anymore. I either save the money, or I go to an independent label, or I go to an independent jeweler and then they help me fix the issues. So this is my personal way of dealing with it, but still it fascinates me. So on the one hand, there are so many videos saying outrage, 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 luxury is dead. And then you see the lines in front of these stores. So I'm really curious what you think about that. Do you have the same feeling as I do, or do you see it differently? Please let me know in the comments below. And with this, I have also reached the end of my video. And if you enjoyed this video, also if you learned something today, please let me know. And there are 2 ways how you can do this. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Also, you can give me a like. It's very easy. It doesn't cost you anything. And for us creators, this is really important feedback. And if you prefer to read about fashion, I also have a lot of articles on my website, thepinklookbook.com. And you can also check out my fashion label Pelagona if you like. And if you enjoyed this video about luxury jewelry, I also have this other video about Cartier, which you may enjoy. Thank you very much for joining me in this video, and see you in the next one.